It's indeed a beautiful, beautiful day to be alive and well. And I'd like to welcome you on today's edition of the show. It's always nice to have you join us. This is Political Spectrum coming to you live from Uyo, the state's capital. And I remain your host, Onumese Ehinoma Olusegun. As always, today promises to be exciting and engaging. And as usual, our conversations continue on everyday political and economic developments in Nigeria. Policy and policy actions of government with immediate reactions by citizens, businesses, institutions, and the civil society to it. We follow conversations from its citizens who are directly impacted by such policies or executive orders, and with a view to throwing light on government activities, decisions, and or directions as they affect the citizen, the office of the citizen of the Federal Republic. But first, on President Tinubu's administration's calendar, today is October the 5th, Wednesday, 2023, and it marks exactly 130 days of President Bola Tinubu in office as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. This is now exactly 4 months and 10 days as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. All right, moving straight into the issues of the day, it appears the Chicago State University saga between the former presidential candidate of the PDP, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, and the current president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has refused to go away. Now, Presidency Atiku disagree over certificate Tinubu submitted to the INEC. And it has another reaction. Labour Party says, we wait for Supreme Court's verdicts. And according to Labour Party, they feel it's a shame that the president has brought to the country. Now, the presidency has refuted claims that the certificate President Bola Tinubu presented to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, in order to run for presidency in 2023 was a forged document. Now, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Temitope Ajayi, in a statement yesterday said Chicago State University, CSU, did not admit that the certificate Tinubu presented to INEC was fake anywhere in its deposition. He argued further that the university affirmed on the oath that Tinubu attended and graduated from the institution and that the school does not handle replacements of lost certificates. Now, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tuga, said the administration of President Tinubu does not have time to waste on, according to him and in inverted commas, trivial matters, describing Atiku's current move as distractions. However, Mr. Paul Ibe, Special Advisor to former Vice President and the People's Democratic Party PDP 2023 presidential candidate Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, dismissed Tuga's position as irresponsible and shameful. And he countered Ajayi, saying, from the deposition on CSU's record on Tinubu's forged the document. This came as the Labour Party regretted that the controversies trailing Tinubu's academic records were putting Nigeria's image among the Committee of Nations on trial. Now, adding that it was awaiting the Supreme Court's decision on the issue to take a final position on the forged documents. But Ajayi's rebuttal comes amid reports that the Chicago State University has said in the testimony of the institution that the Nigerian president presented a forged degree certificate to the INEC when he filed his paperwork to lead Nigeria in 2022 of June. Now, Ajayi, in his submission, said there is no truth in such claims, as no man can forge a certificate he already possesses, and it is only what you don't have that you forge. End of quote. Now, taking to his account on X microblogging platform, the presidential media aide wrote, we should be clear, in the deposition made by the Chicago State University, there was nowhere the university said the certificate presented to INEC by President Tinubu is fake. Now, the university insisted on the oath that the President Tinubu graduated with honors, and even at that, replacement for lost certificates are done by the vendors and not the university. Clear and unambiguous. Now, Tuga went further. Speaking on television on Wednesday, he said that the controversy does not cast a shadow on some of the recent international engagement that the president has had. Now, he further argued that the former president, Muhammadu Buhari, experienced a similar controversy over his academic qualifications. Now he says, and I quote, nobody is wasting time about certificate qualifications for somebody who has been a governor of a state, served 2 terms, and has been on the national stage as a politician. And then the quote continues, the current economic challenges we are facing, we shouldn't be wasting time about whether a certificate is lost a T or missing an I, hasn't been dotted or whatever. That shouldn't be our primary focus at the moment, end of quote, he said. Now, Mazi on the other side said the foreign affairs minister is, according to him, irresponsible. How can you, a foreign affairs minister, say that kind of thing? Is he validating forgery? That's the question by Mazi Ibe. Now, when asked if Atiku would approach the Supreme Court with the Chicago State University disclosure on Tinubu, Ibe said that this is up to the lawyers. I am sure they are working on that, end of quote. Now, Atiku has up to today, October the 5th, to file fresh evidence at the Apex Court as part of appeal against the affirmation of President Tinubu's election by the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal. But the question now remains, as the case moves from the petition court to the Supreme Court, which is serving in this case as an appellate court, are they going to allow fresh evidences to be filed, or will they follow the materials already admitted in court? And these are the questions that we will be able to answer as the events continue to unfold. Now, back to yesterday, there was a little bit of drama. It's not only enough that the president added 3 extra names as ministerial nominee. We also heard that one of the nominees, due to age or exhaustion or weakness or some sort, slumped during the screening. Now, the ministerial screening, Senate confirms nominee Balarabe, who slumped, amongst 2 others. Now, the Senate has confirmed the Kaduna State ministerial nominee Abbas Balarabe, who slumped during his screening earlier on Wednesday. Similarly, the Senate also confirmed Dr. Jamila Ibrahim and Ayodele Olawande, who were nominated as ministers of youths and ministers of state for youths, respectively. Now, recall that there was palpable fear in the Senate on Wednesday when Balarabe, who replaced Nasir El-Rufai, slumped during his screening. Now, Balarabe had just finished sharing his experience when the incidents occurred. Now, he was the second nominee to be screened after Ibrahim. After reading his profile, Balarabe received an endorsement from the Kaduna lawmaker, who indicated that 3 senators from the Senate validated his nomination. But Balarabe slumped on the podium, while the Kaduna South Senator Sunday Katung was given an appraisal of Balarabe's administrative background. Now, after a sudden incident, the Senate President Goodwill Akpabio had called for water and sugar, and also to call Dr. Wale. I believe Dr. Wale should be one of the resident doctors who takes care of emergencies. Now, the Senate President asked journalists and cameramen to stop filming and leave the plenary as at that moment. Thereafter, Balarabe was immediately rushed to the National Assembly clinic, to be looked after. The Senate then resumed after about 45 minutes break to confirm the 3 nominees. Now, the Senate had read the names of the nominees, which were sent by President Bola Tinubu on Tuesday. Now, there you have it. Let's take a look at the visuals.
He's a seasoned administrator from his resume as presented. He's also somebody who has understood the
Mr. Wait. Can you say water, give me water. Water and sugar. Water and sugar. Get sugar, and water. Is there any, where is Dr. Wale? Can the camera see immediately?
live.
Yes, distinguished Senator Marshall.
Mr. President, sitting as chair, Senator Sunday Marshall Katun, I represent the people of Katun.
Can you say water, give me water. Water and sugar. Water and sugar. Get sugar, and water. Is it, where is Dr. Wale? Can the camera see it immediately? Can we have a closed session? Will the cameraman please leave us?
Now, there you have the Senate President trying to manage the situation by calling for water and sugar, and also calling a certain Dr. Wale, who probably could be the emergency doctor. But a lot of questions come to mind. What is the state of health of the nominee being screened? That has been added to the wider arguments and conversations, especially from critics who have said that they've never witnessed such a federal cabinet this large. Now, the questions about the conversations around reducing the cost of governance and reducing the size of the Nigerian behemoth government continues. And yet, we've not heard any substantive response from any of the presidential aide of the president himself as to why the federal ministerial cabinet keeps increasing. We understand that the man who slumped was supposed to be representing Kaduna, Kaduna State, who already had a slot that was empty due to the fact that Nasir El-Rufai, His Excellency, former governor Kaduna, was rejected due to security reports. That man was supposed to substitute Nasir El-Rufai, but here we have it. It could be as a result of age or ill health, but all these things were supposed to have been put into consideration before these issues arose. But we wish him the best. We wish the Red Chamber the best at piloting the affairs of the nation with the little contributions they can contribute. Let's move to the next development, which seems to be or has been in the front burner. Now, this is a fresh development over something that looks like a long trail of developments ever since the presidency has pronounced that subsidy is gone. And now the fresh development states that are federating units in Nigeria, about 36 of them, some states are divided over federal government's 35,000 wage award to federal workers. Now, let's look at some of the reactions and take a few of the states. Now, states were split over the agreement that the federal government reached with the NLC and the TUC on Monday night to pay 35,000. Remember, it was 25. Later, it was added to 35. Some people will say it's federal government's desperacy to ensure that NLC never went on the planned strike. And yes, it worked. Now, on Monday night, to pay 35,000 wage award to federal workers to cushion the effect of petrol subsidy removal. Now, while some of the states said they would align with the federal government's 35,000 wage award for its workers, others said they had already started paying their workers 10,000 naira even before the federal government award, and will therefore not be bound by the central government's move to recall that the federal government had in the agreement accepted to continue payment of the wage award until a new minimum wage is arrived at sometime around next year. Let's take Kwara State, for example. In Kwara State, the government said it had already started paying 10,000 wage award to its workers even before the federal government and promised to continue to pay, but was silent on its readiness to upscale to 35,000 naira. Now, still in Kwara, the chief press secretary of the governor, Rafiu Ajakaye, said yesterday, and I quote, Kwara State government awarding extra 10,000 to every civil servant since July, apparently pioneering some sort of cash award. He continues, and I quote, the government will continue with this measure and more, such as the 10,000 cash award to students of Kwara State's origin to bring more ease to the people, end of quote. Now, let's see what is happening in Kebbi State as reactions trail the 35,000 naira wage award. Now, in Kebbi State, the government said it will sit with cabinet members soon to determine what wage award to pay to its workers. That was very, very ambiguous. Now, the special advisor to Governor Nasir Idris on media and publicity, Malam Yahaya Sarki, said that though it's still too early to comment on the issue as the agreement was only signed between the federal government and Labour on Monday night, the governor, being a former unionist, will approve something substantial for the workers. And that is the statement coming from that state. Now, let's take a look at what Enugu is saying, reactions trailing the 35,000 naira wage award. In Enugu State, the government agreed to replicate the federal government's wage award of 35,000 for its workers. Now, Enugu State Commissioner for Labour and Employment, Chika Oguke, told media designed to alleviate the plight of workers in the state. Now, in Niger State, the Commissioner of Information and Strategy, Hajia Binta Mahaman, declared that the state government will not be hasty in taking a decision on what to add to its workers. That was a little tricky. Now, based on the 35,000 increment announced by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, now the commissioner said, follow me, the commissioner said the council meeting, which will be presided over by the governor himself, Muhammad Umar Bago, will deliberate on what she described as sensitive issue to arrive at a figure to pay after reviewing the financial implications for the state. Now, Binta urged workers to be patient on the issue, adding that a declaration will soon be made. That was another ambiguous statement, not particularly clear, but of course we know what these issues are. Some states are afraid that once they embark on such wage award at such scale, they may not have money left to run the state, and some states are very diplomatic. Let's quickly look at what Adamawa Adamawa's reaction to the 35,000 wage award. Now, in Adamawa State, the state government said it was ahead of the federal government in the provision of palliatives to cushion effects of the removal of fuel subsidy. Now, this government said it had already approved and had started paying 10,000 naira across board as transport allowances to all categories of workers in the state. Now, the chief press secretary to Governor Ahmadu Fintiri Dikin Humasha Wunosiko told media that 35,000 approved by the federal government will be looked into by the state government. Now, he says, and I quote, the moment the directive is received from the federal government, Adamawa will sit with Labour at our level here to see to its workability. End of quotes. That is the deposition by the chief press secretary of Adamawa State. Now, let's quickly look at Ondo. Ondo government assured its workers that it will key into the federal government's template to cushion the effect of the removal of subsidy. Now, speaking with the media in confidence, a top government official who pleaded anonymity said, and I quote, although the agreement is between the federal government and Labour, but our own state too will have to meet with the Labour to discuss and agree on what will cushion the effect of the removal of fuel subsidy. Now, he says, and I quote, continue to quote, the state government will soon be meeting with the Labour leadership in a bid to look into the matter appropriately. Now, the state governor, Rotimi Akeredolu, is ready to do whatever is within the limit of the state to assist the workers. We want to assure our workers that they will smile after the negotiation with the state Labour leaders when it is finalized. Now, that is another reaction that is not really clear whether the 10,000 will be upscaled to 35,000 or it will remain at 10,000 to be able to afford to do other things within the state. Remember that these allocations and subventions are limited and the governors have to work with what they have, and that is what the chief press secretary has said. Let's quickly look at Oyo as we wind down on this development. Now, in Oyo State, the special advisor to Oyo State governor on labor matters, Mr. Titilola Sodo, said Oyo State government will meet with the labor leaders in a collective bargaining process to arrive at a mutually satisfying package for her employees. That is clear and straight. We are not ready to do anything yet until we'll meet and then we will announce. Now, Ekiti State government expressed its desire to key into the federal government's measures to cushion the effects of fuel subsidy removal. Now, speaking with media, the Commissioner of Information and Civic Orientation, Mr. Taiwo Olatunbosun, said, and I quote, our state will not be an exemption, having seen what the federal government has agreed to do with labor and the workers. Now, what the federal government has done is good, and we have to look at it at the state level. We will all look at it and do the needful for our workers. The nitty-gritty will be discussed and fine-tuned to follow suit. In other words, a lot of the states are saying, okay, we'll do something. Some have agreed that, okay, it may not be up to the scale with which the federal government has put it. Some are even saying that we had started, you know, already on the wage awards, some for 3 months, some may exceed, but in the end, our objective is that the average plight of the worker is, you know, cushioned, and the complaints and the hardships and the sufferings reduced. We'll go on a short break now. If you're just tuned in, it's Political Spectrum on Spectrum Televisions. We have set the developments, and we'll be going into the conversation session. We'll have a guest that is going to be joining us virtually from Lagos, and then we will put more light into these conversations as we still observe Nigeria at 63. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Join us again.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421, and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but you can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is
my
this
lord.
an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
All right, welcome back. If you're just tuned in, it's Political Spectrum on Spectrum Television, and we have set the template for our conversations this morning. We are virtually joining us from Lagos, Honorable Frank Ehiosun. Honorable Frank Ehiosun is an author and public affairs analyst. I recall he was a special advisor under the administration of Comrade Adams Oshomole many years ago. Honorable Frank, you're welcome on the show. Hello, Frank. Good morning. Welcome on the show. Having a bit of a technical hitch there. We'll just take a short break and try and adjust it and then get back on the show. Please hang on, stay tuned, go nowhere. All right. Honorable Frank Ehiosun, welcome. Good morning to you.
Well, good morning.
How are you doing today? Nice to see your face.
Yeah, very good by His grace.
Nice to see you. Quite a while, sir. How is life and how is everything generally?
Same here. Well, President by His grace.
Okay. All right, we've set the template for our conversation this morning, and we'd like to begin with your own assessment, because this week seems to be a week where we are appraising our big Nigeria, the biggest country in West Africa, probably in Africa, biggest black population. We are appraising at 63, and a lot of people have come here, to give their own opinions on how they feel we fared, where are we coming from, where are we currently, and what are the markers saying we will be in the next 10, 15, 20 years. So I'd like to take your own assessment of Nigeria at 63 as we celebrate our 63rd year after independence. You can use specific sectors or markers or indicators, to buttress your point. Honorable.
In my candid opinion, just like the Secretary to the Government of the Federation affirmed that the President directed that it should be low-key, reflecting where we are presently. I think that speaks volumes as to what is worth celebrating. The 63-year journey is being riddled with avoidable uncertainties, self-inflicted shortcomings, dysfunction. But it's better to put it in a perspective. Let me come from a specific point.
All right.
Because it's been a journey. As at the early 60s, when we gained independence, it was very joyous. We became a republic in 1963, quite exciting equally. There was so much momentum. In fact, the phrase, giants of Africa, actually gained prevalence that time, especially from the standpoint of potential. If you peruse Lee Kuan Yew's book, From Third World to Fourth World, Lee Kuan Yew's book, that he wrote about the country, Singapore, from third world to first world.
To first world, yeah.
He detailed it quite in peace. Yeah, they became a nation, no doubt, not because they wanted it. They were more like pushed out of then Malaya, now Malaysia, without anything to fall back to. And in the course of running across the major European powers to seek for investment, all of them were not inclined to come in his way. They were looking a specific direction in Africa. Where in Africa? Nigeria. Because there was so much potential. As at that time, the Naira was not in use. We are using the Nigerian pounds.
Yeah.
Whose value then was about twice the value of the dollar. Just for mere reference, for the sake of our currency, the value of our currency. Today the Naira is about
1,050.
The dollar is about 1,000 Naira plus.
Yes.
If you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
So that's on the side. So as at 1965, there was still quite some ray of hope. In comparison to the nations they now call Asian tigers, Nigeria, when mentioned, was not in their pedestal. Nigeria was so prospective. We recall the days of the First Republic under Awolowo. The three different regions were developing at quite a comparative pace in terms of the healthy competition under which they operated. We know about the first station in Africa that was built in Nigeria, then under Obafemi Awolowo. In the north, you had very gigantic projects ongoing that were developmental and quite widespread, impacting the people. In the east, you had similar stuff. So it went on. It wasn't a perfect system. But the challenge is that from that time till now, there's been an unfortunate slide. So that is why we cannot really celebrate independence from the standpoint of due excitement. But we celebrate independence with some sense of remorse, looking at the deficit we are victims of, primarily due to the kind of leadership we have had over time. Like the saying goes, that the buck stops on the table of leadership.
Yes.
They determine the policies that everybody runs with at whatever level, whether in religious sector, in the economic sector, in entertainment sector, any sector. So the blame, of course, to a very large extent, if you could rate it, say 99.9%, goes to them in totality.
Okay.
There was something that caught my attention.
Still in line with your argument. Now you have identified that at some point there was promise, there was future, there was hope. But at some point it started degrading. What few factors do you feel would have been responsible for that gradual accentuation into some kind of deplorable state? You had mentioned the quality of leaders, but recall that leadership is derived from its people.
Yeah, there's no contesting the fact that leadership is derived from its people. But that statement is too simplistic to put the issues in due perspective.
Okay, you can buttress
because even if leadership is derived from its people, see my point, even if leadership is derived from its people, the burden of responsibility upon leadership is not same as that which is upon the average man or the people like you put forth. So a man could have been so bad because of the company he keeps. But when he now becomes the person that steers that ship, that determines where the company goes, the responsibility upon him is to chart a new course, however bad it has been in the past. So the fact that you are saying that the people get the kind of leaders they deserve is not in contest. But the leaders are the ones that actually shape the people in the long run.
Okay.
Look at it. It's a known fact in sociology that majority of citizens in all societies are conformists. What do those people conform to? In every society, you see people conforming to what they look up to. And in the hierarchy of human affairs, the peak of the ladder is the political structure. That is superstructure that superintends over every other sector or segment of society.
That's correct.
As wonderful as America is, until Trump emerged, not to undermine his leadership as a president, but until he emerged, Americans did not know the extent to which their people could tilt towards being supremacist inclined. Some things that they thought were very, very
subliminal,
minimal in terms of the impact it could make on them, were amplified by the personality of the president that they had at that time.
Okay.
So I'm saying it in very clear terms, like I affirmed just now, that it's not subject to contention. That in every system,
leadership shapes
a ladder of hierarchy. And people look up to those that are on top. By the rule, the impact of any individual in a society is
all right, we have,
in his sphere of authority. In the same church, if an usher makes a mistake, his mistake may have impact, but the impact is minimal to the extent that his influence spreads. That is why leadership plays the most vital role.
Okay, haven't established these facts, or can I use the word theories, that make a lot of sense about leadership. Then let's apply it to the Nigerian situation. Going back to your first statement, what happened that leaders who were supposed to make its citizens conform to whatever started plunging the nation into a state of some kind of deplorable disposition? Corruption rose, a lot of things happened. And Nigeria, that we used to call the giant of Africa, even the Nigerians are not even sure whether we are giants anymore. I want you to apply that theory to what happened, what may have happened between the 60s, when there was promise, when there was hope, when there was potential, to now, 2023, that we are having to battle with a lot of issues that would have been avoidable if we had better directions from our leaders. Honorable.
It's gradual decadence. You see, in the evolution of nation states, nations don't fail by chance. Nations fail by choice. In the same light, nations succeed by choice, which is reflected by the actions they take, which normally is, of course, tantamount to the prevailing viewpoint or the overwhelming viewpoint of the majority of the people in society. Now, I mentioned Singapore when we commenced this discourse.
The
story of Singapore is one that is worth reflecting on.
Yeah.
Because as at the time in question, they were not a nation to reckon with. When Nigeria is mentioned, Singapore was not even in view.
True.
As at 1965, when he came for a UN conference in Nigeria, he made reference to it in his book. But the same nation, under the leadership of one man, inspired his people. Barely 2 decades after that period, Singapore became a first world nation. While Nigeria, that had the inspiration or the potential to be a great nation, declined further in the base of third world nations.
That is correct.
There is nothing more to it than the fact that nations are built on laws. But for laws, nations will simply tease towards Obesian state of nature, where life is brutish, short, nasty. So where laws are not prioritized, of course, the decline in nationhood is definite. Aristotle said something in his piece. He wrote a piece about 350 BC, the political. Section 1212 specific of that piece. He said that in a democracy where the law is supreme, the best citizens occupy the government. But in a democracy where the law is not supreme, he said it results in a systematic monarchy where a few people preside over the affairs of state and lead discretionally. So Nigeria got to where it is presently because impunity was given the pride of place, the law was pushed to the back seat. That is the basic truth. Because nations evolve over time with deliberate effort at ensuring that laws are prioritized. Because what makes for a nation is the enforcement of laws. But see where we are today. There's been not just gradual, but geometric degradation in our law enforcement index from that time till date. Right now in Nigeria, if government policies are made, the level of enforcement suffers from a deficit that is tantamount to the law enforcement index that we reflect as a nation today. I was talking to somebody recently and he said that by the index of law enforcement, Nigeria cannot even be given a scale of 20 or 25%. And how can a nation make progress when the nation lacks the wherewithal or the seriousness to enforce its laws? Unfortunately, a nation is as sound, as progressive, as is effective, and as sustainable as its capacity to enforce its laws.
Quite instructive.
I have my personal opinion.
Yeah.
You know, as at the time we started in 1960, it was a parliamentary system.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there were flaws. No system is perfect. The world over is part of the human evolution. But on and on and on, there are deliberate efforts to correct flaws, to ensure that what is good is made better. But rather than prioritize that lane, the leadership in the First Republic was doing good until politics and impunity took charge, unfortunately. You know what Tafawa Balewa and the MPN leadership, the MPC then, it was MPC, because it was the Second Republic, it became MPN.
Yeah.
They were so inclined to taking charge of the system. And unfortunately, they had alliance with the NCNC. And what had these shortcomings? Nobody is perfect, but it was driven by his own ambition. So in terms of cutting him short by all means, they short-circuited the law. So in short-circuiting the law, they brought about the violence, popularly called the Wild Wild West, in the early 60s. If they had prioritized following the law, if you read Awo's piece, he wrote more than 20 books with so many of them detailing what happened at that time.
Exactly.
If the leaders at that time prioritized following the law, the First Republic could not have collapsed. But rather than placing premium on the law, they place premium on themselves, because there is no nation that can survive when the discretion of its leaders takes the place of primacy as against the law. Nations can only survive as much as the law takes the place of primacy in everything that pertains to the evolution of that nation state. So, unfortunately, the military interrupted, and we went on and on in the unfortunate military interregnum. Agni Rossi brought about his decree, where he unified the entire system.
And made it a unitary system. Yes.
He went on from, unfortunately, he was interrupted. Murtala Mohammed, Gowon came up from there after the coup that ousted him too. Murtala Mohammed took over. On and on and on, Nigeria progressed with leaders that were not quite inclined to towing the line of proper evolution of a nation state. You see, let me just make a point of emphasis.
Okay.
Nigeria is not even quite in the category of, in my opinion, countries that we could properly define as nation states. There's a difference between a nation and a state. A nation can be a collective of people bound by their bound by their tradition, their culture, their history, their their language. But a state is defined by sovereignty and government. A state is defined by sovereignty and government. So when they say nation state, it's because there's proper balance. That apart from having that factor of sovereignty and the fact that there's somebody that superintends in terms of government that enforces the sovereignty, there's equally that harmony in terms of unity among the diverse to ensure that the collective works on the same path, which enhances or reflects the concept of being a nation. That's why I said Nigeria fails that test, even if we could say it's still a nation state on the peripheral note. So we went on and on and on. So many dismal decisions. If I may even interject with some viewpoints from the side.
Feel free.
The military made so many crazy decisions that made us told the path we have taken to date. Even the shift of the federal capital territory from Lagos to Abuja is one of those decisions that were subject to the rigors of critical thinking. There are some experts that have been examining that point till date, that why move a capital from Lagos to Abuja? The resources expended on that venture is one of the wastefulness reflective of the pattern of governance in Nigeria that brought us to where we are. Because that resources could have been enough to solve so much of our infrastructural deficit. It would have been enough to ensure that we had at power supply per citizen in the country. It ensured that we had enough railroads, both electric rails, even underground rails.
Yeah.
But Murtala Mohammed and the other folks in this enclave opted to just make that choice because, yeah, there was abundance of money possibly from oil.
Okay.
But where leadership did not, there's an unfortunate flaw from the past. You see, these leaders did not appreciate the fundamental of Murphy's law, which, put in perspective, states that if anything can go wrong, it will surely go wrong.
Okay.
As it pertains to nation state, because that theory applies to it, there must be effort beyond measure to ensure that it maintains course. Because on its own, it will fall victim of that law, as Murphy put forth, that if anything can go wrong, it will certainly go wrong. So our leaders have just played on and on and on, very funny and crazy games that brought us to this point. Now, see the effects of impunity. Corruption is at its peak. About 2 years ago, Nigeria overtook Congo as the foremost country that suffers from lack of electricity. The world over, Nigeria took that record from Congo. It's the same Nigeria that had its first power station installed in 1896, when some major powers in the world had not even gotten electricity at commercial quantity or commercial level. But at ECO then, in 1896, before Nigeria gained independence, there was already a standard power station producing electricity. But here we are today, 63 years of independence, and we are still grappling with about 4,100 megawatts of electricity.
Or even less.
I'm taking the upper limit. You know,
Okay.
it's fluctuates. So I took it to 4,100 just in case it stays there maybe for some minutes before it goes down to the normal level of less than about 2,000. Check out our power generation. The distribution of power as at 1975-76 was over 2,000 megawatts.
And with a
As at
population that was
1980,
less than 60 million Nigerians.
Already distributing well over 2,000 megawatts. Population that was less than 80 million.
Yeah.
Now we are over 200 million as put forth by the Bretton Woods institutions. You know, Nigeria does not know our population. The population Nigeria has always worked with in terms of relevant statistics is the one given to us, especially by the World Bank. That's why I said the Bretton Woods institutions.
Exactly.
So that is equally one of the failures of government.
Yeah. But Frank,
dysfunction.
as we stand on your valid arguments, I'd like to throw in something in addition to this argument. And that is, you've talked about power, you've talked about leadership quality, you've talked about direction, you've probably talked about corruption. At this stage, as Nigeria celebrates 63 years, should we be grappling with the issue of certificates and academic records? That brings me to my second question. The certificate forgery accusation of Alhaji Atiku towards the president doesn't seem to be going away. There's been a lot of developments to this now, but the president's aides are insisting that one can only forge what one does not have. How do you see this ugly development at this time in the life of the Federal Republic of Nigeria?
I think it's quite unfortunate. Unfortunate because we should have better issues to ponder with, to consider, to address than such frivolities. But I think I'll put the blame on the doorstep of Mr. President.
And why is that?
He's the one, in my opinion, that didn't manage the issues well. Now, the reason is simple. The folks who are pursuing that certificate stuff are given momentum, or they are motivated by the issues of the past over the inconsistencies in the president's academic records.
Okay.
That is the issue. Now, see my point. The president is a great guy, but like I said, he didn't manage the issues well. It should not be fair to reach a conclusion without making the course to where it started from. In 1999, it was the late Chief Gani Fahimi that took the president to court. Now, when Gani took the president
he was
to court,
governor.
Gani never contested the fact that Bola Tinubu is a graduate. That was never his contest. His contest was an issue, was forgery. That was what he alleged. Now, unfortunately, as at that time, the president filled a form when he was contesting in 1998 for the governorship of Lagos State. And in that form, it wasn't Chicago State University that was filled. It was University of Chicago.
Yes, University of Chicago. We have that.
I'm just trying to put it in perspective.
Yes.
Secondly, this primary school he filled that he attended, St. Paul's Children Home School in
Aroloya
in Lagos. Aroloya, yeah, I'm not Yoruba. I tried to pronounce it as much as I could. Then the secondary school he filled, the government college Ibadan.
Yeah.
Those were the issues that Gani Fahimi took to court, which unfortunately were not quite addressed. You know, there are a number of factors in immunity and all whatnot.
Yes.
Not that he's not a university graduate. And somewhere, somehow, till date, those questions are still left unanswered. Because what Gani Fahimi said was that school was not existing, as are the dates reflected in the documents he submitted to INEC in that was late 1990s, no, the election was in 1999. So that's why I said there's a history to this mismanagement of this personal information. There is nothing to it. By the provisions of our laws, you don't need to go to any peculiar school for you to emerge as a leader. And it's normal because the fundamentals of universal suffrage gives room for everybody to participate in the process. That is ordinarily the essence of democracy.
But personally, Frank,
if you didn't go to primary school, secondary school, there's nothing wrong.
Personally, do you have an issue with that law that the highest office in the Federal Republic qualification is just a school leaving certificate, and whether you graduate or not is not an issue? Do you have a problem with it, or you think, okay, it's part of the process, since it's like that, it should be followed suit? What's your opinion on that? You just raised a vital issue there, Frank.
See, I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with it. If you go to other advanced democracies, it is not different, because the process is supposed to accommodate all and sundry. Why do people make their choice? You didn't even quote the portion as it is. It didn't just end as certificate. He said, or its equivalent.
Or its equivalent, yes. I
that
just paraphrase.
Masari, the former governor of Katsina State, when he was in the House of Rep, the issue was brought up. And the guy said that he left secondary school at, I think, class 3 because of the level of penury of his parents. But by that factor of equivalence, he was able to participate in the process. Let the people make their choice. It is too frivolous for the constitution to now be putting a PhD professor this as a requirement. For Christ's sake, if we want to go by requisite measurement, how many of the distinguished experts who had a performance index when they were in office? So that provision in the constitution is not wrong. It's very, very appropriate for a conventional democracy, a democracy that ensures due disaggregation to enhance a sense of inclusion for all and sundry, for everybody to participate in the process of the evolution of nation state. So the people will make their choice. Abraham Lincoln didn't have formal education. He was one of the one of the best presidents America has ever. You now make it impossible for a man like Lincoln, who studied on his own and became so intelligent and possibly
All right, we've been interrupted again, but I believe what is trying to establish is that the law that says for the highest office of the land, which is the president, school leaving certificate is not out of place, and that affords a lot of people, whether educated or not, that probably have natural intelligence or nature's intelligence, according to his argument, can aspire to the office of the president. But our conversations are centered around Atiku not letting go and trying to either prove that certificates of the president is a forged certificate, or maybe an objective is, according to people who have argued, that Atiku may have been humiliated by the presidential election petition court and wants to get back on a global scale, you know, to just embarrass the president. But the story doesn't seem to go away. 2, 3, 4 days ago, we've had it on the front burner alongside with the NLC's continuous agitations with federal government. Let's try and see whether we can re-establish that connection and continue on the conversation. Mr. Frank, are you back? Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm back.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, no problem at all. It's not your fault.
We're talking about the we're talking about the qualification in the Constitution.
Yes, please continue.
In public offices.
Yes, continue.
Yes, so I made reference to the United States in the course of my earlier assertions. That Abraham Lincoln, the foremost and one of the best presidents America has ever had till date,
yes,
didn't quite have the privilege of formal education.
He was self-educated.
The American Constitution streamlined.
He was self-educated.
For emergence, to say you must be a Harvard graduate or have one minimum or the other, he may have been disqualified. So the concept of democracy for all and sundry, especially when they hit certain age range, to be able to participate, both to be elected and to vote. There's nothing wrong with it. Let the people make a choice of who would lead them.
Okay. All right. Away from that, I think we have discussed extensively about the issue, but like I've said, it doesn't seem to be going away. But one of the major issues on the front burner too, as we celebrate Nigeria at 63, is organized labor friction with the federal government. And it appears that they have sought common grounds now by the simple action of organized labor suspending the strike for the next 30 days to see whether government will meet its demands. And what are these demands? They are not unconnected with the fuel subsidy removal and a move for a certain document that reads all the palliatives to cushion the effects. And labor is saying, okay, these things look like you are joking with the average Nigerian worker. Recall that the Organized Labor LLC TUC are the largest civil society in Nigeria. So how would you describe the federal government's management of the NLC and TUC recently after all the back and forth? Now, NLC decides to suspend its planned strike for 30 days. Do you see a future improvement in federal government organized labor relations moving forward? What is your opinion on that?
Okay, sorry, before I throw light on that, let me just use a few seconds to hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, feel free. Feel free. Feel free, Frank. All right.
Because, you know, we're talking about the Tinubu, the certificate saga.
Yes.
I just diverted to some areas just to reflect the fundamental about the concept of universal suffrage, practice of democracy.
That's
but
fine.
That aside, like I said, the blame goes to the president in terms of management. But the university, this Chicago State University, has put paid to the issue of his being a graduate of that institution. So that's not anymore a subject of contention. So if there's another issue in view, I feel that it's possible that the Atiku folks may resurrect the issues that were left unattended from the case that Gani took to court that has not quite been, in quote, exhaustively addressed. So maybe they want to resurrect something in that light. I don't know. But apart from that, his qualification to be president is not in contest. But
Okay.
for the mismanagement, like
Okay, that's fine. So now to the NLC-FG relations.
Now, coming to the NLC issue. NLC, is no doubt the, like you said just now, the largest civil society organization since they are categorized in that purview. And they play quite a role because if you go by the number of people who are working within that sector, they don't even form 8%, or they don't form 0.5% of the population of the country. You know that within the sphere of organized governments put together, they are just within the range of a few millions.
Okay.
But the good thing is that NLC, when about their pursuit, always encompass the interest of all and sundry to a large extent, especially as it pertains to the proliferate. When I perused their memorandum that they reached with the government about 3 days ago,
okay,
I think they said they are supposed to take it to court to give it some, good, to vitalize it in a sense from the legal standpoint. Some of the points are worthwhile. Government, unfortunately, is always government. And the fact that there will always be friction between government and labor management due as in considerations, negotiation to accommodate the interest of all and sundry. That's really what matters most. Though I'm very, very afraid when I saw the document, the amount of money that they will pay to workers within the next 6 months, not even 6 months. When the president made his broadcast on the 1st of October,
okay,
he gave it a timeline. But in the memorandum they reached, there wasn't a timeline anymore. It was now put at until they negotiate a new minimum wage. So what it means is that the 35,000 naira that is added to the amount being paid to these workers, federal workers specifically, because many states may not quite fall within that purview. Those of them say they're already paying some pittance, some 10,000, some less in whatever capacity. I ponder over where government to get the money to pay that amount as stated.
Okay.
But before I go ahead, I equally want to blame NLC to a very large extent for this predicament that we are victims of assassination. Are you with me?
I'm with you. So why would you say that? Why would you blame NLC?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly. Go on.
Hello, Shagun.
Yeah, I can hear you clearly. Can you hear me? Hello, Frank. Can you hear me? Establish contact, so that we can continue on the conversation.
Or like him. But in 2007, I can hear you. In 2007,
okay, that's good.
Made a good decision. Good decision in the sense that he opted to make the NNPC swim in the pool of the LNG that has been quite functional since they towed that line. What did he do? He attempted to sell NNPC in a few of their refineries. He tried to get buyers from Europe and America. He couldn't get. The price they were giving for purchase was so ridiculous that he knew that it was impossible to make any business on those fronts. Of his own initiative, he called Dangote and a few other people. He sold the idea to them. They formed what they called Blue Star. Dangote 2%. River State had some stakes. Airtel had some stakes. Wando had some stakes. To buy 51% shares or stakes, as the case may be.
Controlling shares, yes.
of Port Harcourt, Warri Refinery and Kaduna Refinery. The total sales then was to the tune of about $720 million. Federal government was still supposed to own it to the tune of 49%. And I make reference to it on and on and on. The only functional sector that brings profit to Nigeria as a nation state in the oil and gas sphere is LNG. And why is that possible? It's because government involved private sector. The oil majors,
okay,
they are serious in business. They own 51% of the stakes. So, but NLC moved against it. That's one of the worst decisions or mistakes that Yar'Adua did or made in his tenure. In 2007, over that issue.
Okay.
He said
when he reverted the sale of the refineries.
It was because of something about the sales of the refinery. I think it was the Port Harcourt refinery and a portion of and the Kaduna refinery. The other one was for $561 million. The Kaduna refinery was for $160 million. Dangote and the others already paid for it, but the money was returned. Now, see the start story. NSC was against it.
Okay.
The same NSC that was against it, as at, we're talking about 16 years ago today, because it was in 2007, this 2023.
Yeah.
Nigerian government would have made $720 million upfront. Dollars at that time was less than 70 naira, well below 100 naira to $1. So just imagine the impact that $720 million would have had on our economy. Apart from the fact that the refineries will not be functional like LNG, and maybe they would have been exporting refined product. By now, we will not be having the challenge of our foreign exchange deficit, where the government is not struggling to survive. But NLC did not see far. They were just concerned about the latitude of access to the money that people get on a monthly basis that may not even take them home, rather than think of the future in the long run. Because all that pertain to the workers would have been taken care of. And by now, Nigeria would have been, Dangote may not have been thinking about this refinery, maybe for the sake of expansion. That's why I said I blame NLC.
The NLC.
Now, see the show of shame. See the show of shame. The same refineries that were to be sold, not in total, just about 50%.
Just a part of it, yes.
And government will make $720 million. About 14 years after, under Buhari, not even the two, just one of them, government is now outsourcing an Italian firm to come and revive the refinery. At what cost? Billions upon billions of dollars.
Probably 10 or 15 times more. Yeah.
No, 10 or 15 times more is an understatement. It's in phases. They have the first stage, the second phase is in four phases. Now, when those guys finish with their investment in the refineries, they will run it and recoup their investment.
Before they hand it over.
That those refineries will not come back to Nigerian custody in 5 decades.
Wow.
So you see what this nation throws away. That's why I was talking about the impunity of leadership. This is our political system. Just a point of emphasis by the side. I miss this discourse. When the likes of Afe Babalola and some scholars in the country have propounded the viewpoint that it is better for us to go back to a parliamentary system of government. I want to make this point very boldly, that a fit for purpose parliamentary system of government is what this country needs. This presidential system that Obasanjo imported in 1979 without due consultation, but driven by the excitement of Mr. Know-it-all, even if he's not an expert in all fields.
Okay.
Imposed upon us as a nation, where we followed the rigors of the luxury of the presidential system, but did not follow the funding pattern as it is in the US, where people that contest are not the ones that fund their election, but everybody participates in the process. That is what has brought us to this sorry state to a large extent. And it will take us further down if it's not the one. That is the truth. The cost of governance right now is hellish. It's hellish. If we're practicing parliamentary system, for Christ's sake, in the First Republic, in the Second Republic, senators and members of House of Reps, as the case may be, were not being paid salaries. They were given sitting allowances. because they had jobs to do. And they had better impact on the nation as at that time. They made more laws. They impacted their constituencies better. Today, what do we have? We have them sitting full-time. And I can tell you free of charge that government in Nigeria is the biggest business for personal aggrandizement.
And
that
Frank,
is why everybody is rushing to
that is
protest.
really interesting. The intention is not to interrupt you, but that last point you've made takes me to this question as we gradually wrap up. It's been an exciting conversation with you, Frank. Thank you so much. But you just mentioned that those days we used to have members of parliament on part-time, and better laws were made, which by implication meant the size of government was not as huge and as behemoth as it is today. Now, the recent ministerial screening is testament to an increase yet again in the federal cabinet of the president, when ordinarily people are advocating for a reduction in the size of governance. This seems to be the largest cabinet in the history of Nigeria. Would you commend this or criticize, and what will be your reasons? We have 3 ministerial nominees that have been confirmed. I think it's going to make a total of, if it's not 50, it should be 51 now, if my math or arithmetic is correct. How do you see this size of the federal cabinet in line with cutting down and reducing the size of government? Frank, as we wrap up.
Now, it's a continuation of the voyage of wastage. That's why I view it. Yeah, the president has a right to appoint as many as he chooses. But it's one of the unfortunate results of this political system. That is why the presidential system is not working well and will not work well for Nigeria as it is. That is the truth. 48 ministers. What is achievable, apart from the fact that you want to compensate those that participate in the political process? I just hope it do not take us down the path of Ghana, as they are falling victim of late. Because Ghana, as at 4 years ago, was the fastest growing economy in the world. But the president, in pursuit of trying to carry so many people along, appointed more than 1,000 people and not whatnot. Today, see the story that they have in Ghana. Because projects were pursued, not from the standpoint of ensuring the greatest good to the greatest number of people in terms of benefit, but pursued from the standpoint of populist appeal, that will just make people say, oh, he did it. And when government is driven on that note, of course, the valley is its destination. Now, coming back to this viewpoint, this president, like I blame Labour just now. Sorry, I'll see hit the nail on the head on this question you had just now. When I blame Labour for what happened.
It's okay, go on.
The NNPC stuff. Nigerian government is structured in a way that is antithetical to the interest of the people. It is not even reflective of the conventional or popular division of democracy, as we all know it, where they say it's government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Nigerian government, over time, for so long a time, for decades now, has repaired to the path where government is about ensuring the greatest good to those who have access to office, access to government, who are up there. Why the people do not occupy a primary place but a tertiary place, which contravenes a clear provision of the Constitution. Section 14, subsection 2B of our Constitution, by some dint of happenstance, that same provision, the directive principle of state policy, chapter 2, was replicated the exact same way it was in the 1979 Constitution.
Okay.
And it states in very clear terms that the security and welfare of the people, the citizens,
shall be the primary responsibility of government.
The primary purpose of government. But here we are today. That portion is lost to history, because right now government is performing actually for itself. See my point?
Yeah.
It's easy for government to punish people for the failures of the past. 99.9% of Nigerians are being inflicted with pain, subsidy removal, and all the other policies.
Yeah.
But those who circumvented due process between 1999 and presently, over $25 billion is estimated to have been spent in revamping the refineries. Nothing to show for it. Those who spend those monies are not held to account. Those who steal the system dry, they walk around even with guards, as in security men, paid with taxpayers' money protecting them. Government cannot hold them to account. But it's very easy for government to punish the citizens. Now, look at another point. They say subsidy, subsidy, subsidy. In most countries of the world, subsidy suffices. It's just that it may not be in the oil sector. Saudi Arabia,
that's correct,
the number one producer of oil in the world, still has subsidy.
Yeah. A lot of countries have huge budget for subsidy for energy and power. That's correct.
No, see my point. They reviewed their subsidy policy in 2015. That review was not because products were being stolen across the borders. Because in Saudi Arabia, the government is functional and in charge. Okay. Where government is in charge, you don't talk about smuggling. Now, they reviewed it because there was some sense of abuse by the citizens in terms of the subsidy that was infused. So the subsidy was not diverted into other space. But they see subsidy, they only reduced it and diverted certain amounts into other areas of benefit. So what is it that Nigerians cannot enjoy the fruit of their labor? We are suffering for the failure of government. Why government cannot hold anybody to account? There was a report last year by the United Nations Development Program, 2022, last year, where they affirmed that it was stated clearly that Nigeria is riddled with unfit leadership, corrupt. They used those terms specifically. That's the United Nations report, just last year. There are statistics of the level of corruption that goes on. See the one that was put forth a few years ago by a UN agency too, that between 1996 and 2014, $89 billion just from one sector, from the oil sector, was stolen in terms of as illegal flows outside Nigeria. $44 billion from that money is from direct crude oil sales. $45 billion is from infractions of invoicing. People that commit these crimes are enjoying. They are buying mansions abroad. They are living in heaven. Government cannot go after them and hold them to account because they are part of government. But government finds it very easy to make the people suffer for the policy failures of their own approach. So that is my pain in this whole issue. That Nigeria as it is presently, I make bold to say, the president was in a hurry to harmonize the foreign exchange level, as the case may be. Unfortunately, I was just thinking aloud. Angola did the same thing a few months ago. I read the report of Angolan government. The central bank governor, even the Minister of Finance, they are speaking in excitement. They liberalized their currency, and the value of their currency increased in a way that no currency in the world increased. Why did that happen? Because government is functional.
All right, Frank, I believe
the president.
Frank, I believe you've made, some very, very valid points. And forgive me, we've really run out of time. I think this conversation will continue sometime in the near future because, like I've always said, these conversations, we cannot exhaust them within the short period of time we have. But I'd like to thank you so much once again for joining us on the show and sharing your wealth of knowledge, because the conversation of deepening democracy and nation building continues. So thank you so much, Frank, for being a part of this show. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
All right, that's about all we can take on the show. We'll see you on the next edition. I remain yours sincerely, Onumese Ehinoma Olusegun, signing out and saying have a great day.